The massive ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. It happened without warning. No strange readings, no unusual signals, just a sudden presence that set off every alarm system on the planet. Commander John Hayes was in the middle of his morning coffee when the call came through. Within 20 minutes, he stood in the control room of the North American Space Defense Coalition, staring at the screen showing the sleek, silver vessel that was nearly 3 miles long. "What do we know?" John asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Nothing yet, sir," replied one of the technicians. "They're just sitting there," as if responding to those words. Every screen, phone, and communication device on Earth lit up with the same message. "We come in peace. We are the Volgari. We wish to talk." The next 72 hours were the most intense of John's life. World leaders gathered in emergency sessions. Military forces went on high alert. And somewhere in the middle of it all, John found himself appointed as the head of the first contact team. "I need the best linguist we have," John told his assistant. That's how Dr. Susan Miller joined the team. She had 3 FAs and a reputation for learning languages faster than anyone in the field. Within hours of receiving the alien transmissions, she was already identifying patterns. "They're using a mathematical base for communication," Susan explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "It's actually quite elegant." 4 days after the ship appeared, John and Susan led a small delegation to meet the Volgari representatives in a hastily prepared facility in Geneva. Security was tight, with soldiers stationed at every corner, their weapons visible but lowered. The Volgari were tall, with bluish skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their ambassador, who called himself High Speaker Zolthar, had 4 arms and eyes that changed color as he spoke. "We have watched your world for some time," Zolthar said through the translation system Susan had helped develop. "Your species shows great promise. We wish to establish trade and share knowledge." John noticed that the alien's eyes shifted to a deep purple when he mentioned trade. "What kind of trade are you interested in?" he asked. "Your world is rich in resources we find valuable. Water, certain minerals, nothing you cannot spare." Zolfar's voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. "In return, we offer technology that will advance your society by centuries." The meetings continued for weeks. Lieutenant Peter Campbell, a young officer on John's team, was assigned to review all communications. One night, while going through the transcripts, Peter noticed something odd. The Volgari used slightly different terms when talking to different nations. With stronger countries, they emphasized partnership. With smaller nations, their language suggested more of a superior-subordinate relationship. "Sir, I think there's something off about these aliens," Peter told John one evening. John frowned. "What do you mean?" "Their words don't match their actions. They talk about equal trade, but the deals they're offering poorer countries are much worse, and they keep asking about our defense systems under the guise of avoiding accidents." John sighed. "Keep looking into it, but be discreet. The politicians are already celebrating like we've won the lottery. No one wants to hear concerns right now." Peter nodded, but the uneasy feeling in his stomach wouldn't go away. 3 months after first contact, Earth signed its first official treaty with the Volgari. As world leaders shook hands with Zolthar in front of flashing cameras, Peter sat in a darkened office, decoding a transmission between Volgari ships. The message was brief but clear. Phase 1 complete. The humans suspect nothing. Begin resource assessment immediately. 6 months had passed since the Volgari arrived on Earth. Life had changed quickly. Alien technology now powered most major cities. Strange new medicines cured diseases that had once been deadly. People walked the streets wearing clothes made from Volgari materials that could keep them perfectly warm or cool. Peter Campbell no longer wore a military uniform. He had quietly resigned his commission 3 months ago, claiming he wanted to pursue private work. Now he sat in a small apartment filled with computers, tracking every piece of information he could find about the aliens. Someone knocked on his door. Peter checked the security camera before opening it. "You're late," he said as Lisa Winters stepped inside. Lisa had been an intelligence analyst before the Vulgari came. Now she worked with Peter off the books. "I had to be careful. They're watching government buildings more closely now," Lisa said, pulling a small drive from her pocket. "But I got what you needed." Peter plugged the drive into his computer. The screen filled with data, shipping routes, mining operations, water collection points, all places where the Vulgari were gathering Earth's resources. "Look at these numbers," Peter said, pointing to the screen. "They're taking 3 times more water from Africa than they reported to the United Nations." Lisa nodded. "Same with the rare earth minerals in South America. And when those countries complain, the Vulgari just send them some new technology as a distraction." Peter pulled up another file. "I've been working on decoding their internal communications. Most of it is still unclear, but I caught this phrase several times." He pointed to a series of symbols. "What does it mean?" Lisa asked. "As best I can tell, it translates to easily manipulated primitives." Lisa's face hardened. "They're talking about us." "Yes, and there's more." Peter opened another file showing satellite images of what the Vulgari had called scientific outposts. The structures were much larger underground than above. Some had strange energy readings that matched nothing in human experience. "We need to take this to someone with authority," Lisa said. Peter sighed. "Like who?" "Admiral Hayes." John Hayes had been promoted after his successful handling of the first contact. He now served as Earth's primary ambassador to the Vulgari. "Yes, exactly like Hayes. He's a good man, Peter. He'll listen." 3 days later, they sat in Admiral Hayes' office. The walls were soundproofed, and Hayes had swept the room for listening devices before they began talking. "These are serious accusations," Hayes said after they presented their evidence. "The Vulgari have brought unprecedented prosperity." "Only to some," Lisa countered. "Ask the people living near their mining operations how prosperous they feel." Peter slid a folder across the desk. 3 small nations have reported their water tables dropping to dangerous levels. When they complained, the Vulgari blamed measurement errors and offered them desalination technology instead of reducing extraction. Hayes studied the papers, his face growing more troubled with each page. "Even if everything you say is true, what can we do? Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "We start by looking more closely at their outposts," Peter said. "There's something strange about the energy readings. Dr. Miller might be able to help us understand what they're really doing." Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Outside his window, a Vulgari transport ship glided silently through the sky, its sleek design beautiful against the clouds. "I'll speak to Susan," he finally said. "But this stays between us for now. If the Vulgari are hiding something, I don't want them to know we're looking." As Peter and Lisa left the building, a Vulgari ship landed nearby. High Speaker Zulther emerged, surrounded by human business leaders and politicians, all smiling and laughing together. "Look how comfortable they've become with us," Lisa whispered. Peter watched the scene with cold eyes. That's exactly what predators want their prey to feel. 1 year had passed since the Vulgari ships first appeared in Earth's sky. Their presence had become normal. Vulgari walked freely in human cities. Their technology was in every home. Their businesses operated on every continent. Dr. Susan Miller sat in her lab, surrounded by recordings of Vulgari speech. For months, she had been studying their language, trying to find the patterns Peter and Lisa suspected were there. 3 days ago, she had found something. The door opened, and Admiral Hayes walked in with Peter and Lisa close behind. "Tell me again what you found," Hayes said, his voice low even though they were in a secure room. Susan pointed to her computer screen. "The Vulgari language has layers. The sounds we hear are only the surface. There's a second layer in the frequencies just beyond human hearing." "What does that mean?" Lisa asked. "It means they're saying one thing to our faces and something completely different to each other at the same time." Susan played a recording. This is High Speaker Zolthar at the United Nations last month. He's talking about peaceful cooperation. She adjusted the sound, filtering out certain frequencies and enhancing others. The same speech now contained different words overlaid with the first. Continue the resource extraction. The humans remain unaware of our true purpose. Phase 2 will begin in 60 days. Hayes' face went pale. What is Phase 2? Susan shook her head. I don't know yet, but I found references to something called the final harvesting in several recordings. Peter opened his laptop. That matches what we found. The Volgari have been placing devices at all their outposts. They look like standard equipment, but we've detected power readings that are off the charts. And their ships, Lisa added. They've brought 43 more into orbit in the last month alone. That's not normal for a diplomatic mission. Hayes stood up straight, decision made. I'm taking this to the Security Council tomorrow. We have enough evidence now. The next day, Hayes presented their findings to the world's most powerful leaders. Some were shocked. Others seemed unsurprised. We've suspected something like this, said the Russian president. Our scientists have been tracking unusual energy patterns near their bases. As have ours, added the Chinese premier. We must confront them together. The meeting lasted for hours. When it ended, they had a plan. Hayes would lead a delegation to meet with Zolthar and demand answers. That meeting never happened. At 3:17 a.m., alarms blared throughout the building where Hayes and the others were sleeping. Guards rushed in, shouting about attacks on military bases worldwide. The Volgari? Hayes asked as they hurried to the command center. No, sir, a soldier replied. It's our own people. Government officials, military officers. They're sabotaging our defense systems. The screens in the command center showed the chaos. Missile silos were going offline. Communication systems were failing. And at every location, humans were helping the Volgari disable Earth's protections. They've had people working for them all along, Susan whispered. A new message appeared on the main screen. High Speaker Zolthar's face filled the display. People of Earth, he said, his voice no longer friendly. Your usefulness as independent beings has ended. Your resources now belong to the Volgari Empire. Your world will be harvested. Resistance is pointless and will only lead to unnecessary suffering. Hayes turned to Peter and Lisa. Get every loyal soldier and civilian you can find. We're going dark. Where? Peter asked. The Rocky Mountain facility. It was built to withstand nuclear war. The Volgari don't know about it. As they rushed to leave, Susan grabbed Hayes' arm. John, I found something else in their language. The Volgari have only one natural enemy they truly fear, a species called the Savage Ones who fought back so viciously that the Volgari never returned to their world. What species was that? Hayes asked. Susan's eyes were hard. I don't know, but I think it's time we showed the Volgari that humans can be savage too. The Rocky Mountain facility was cold and dark when they arrived. Built during the Cold War and updated in secret over decades, it was designed to keep humanity's leaders safe during a nuclear attack. Now it would serve as the last command center for Earth's resistance. Admiral Hayes stood in the main control room, watching as technicians brought systems online. Maps showed the Volgari takeover spreading across the planet. Major cities were under alien control. Military bases had been destroyed or captured. Millions of people were on the move, fleeing the aliens' collection centers. Status report, Hayes demanded. Lisa stepped forward, dark circles under her eyes from 3 days without sleep. We've established contact with resistance groups on every continent. Some military units escaped the initial attack. The Chinese have an entire submarine fleet that remains loyal. The Russians saved most of their special forces units. And our weapons? Hayes asked. Peter looked up from his computer. Not good. The Volgari hit our nuclear facilities first. We have maybe 30 missiles left worldwide, and their ships have technology that can shoot them down before they reach orbit. Susan entered the room, carrying a tablet. I have news. I've been analyzing Vulgari biology from the samples we collected before the attack. They have weaknesses. What kind of weaknesses? Hayes asked. Their skin absorbs oxygen directly from the air. That's why they shimmer. But it also means they're vulnerable to certain toxins. I'm working on something that could affect them without harming humans. Hayes nodded. Good. Keep working. He turned to the others. We need to strike back soon. Show them we're not going quietly. 3 weeks later, they made their first move. Peter led a small team against a Vulgari outpost in Colorado. They'd moved in the darkness, wearing special suits Susan had designed to mask their heat signatures from alien sensors. The outpost was lightly guarded. The Vulgari were confident in their technology and didn't expect resistance. Peter's team slipped past the outer perimeter and planted explosive charges at key points. When they reached the command center, they found something unexpected. A small Vulgari scout ship. Change of plans, Peter whispered into his radio. We're taking the ship. The team split up. Half continued planting explosives while Peter and 3 others entered the ship. The interior was strange, designed for the 4-armed Vulgari. But Peter had studied their technology, and within minutes he had control of the basic systems. Charges set, came the call over the radio. Everyone back to the ship, Peter ordered. As his team boarded, alarms began to sound. Vulgari guards rushed toward the landing pad, their weapons ready. Peter hit what he hoped was the launch control. The ship shuddered, then rose slowly into the air. Detonate the charges, he commanded. The outpost erupted in flames and chaos. Under cover of the explosion, the stolen ship climbed higher into the night sky. Back at the facility, Hayes received news of the successful mission. It was a small victory, but they needed more. Reports from around the world showed the Vulgari stripping resources at an alarming rate. Water levels were dropping. Mines were being dug deeper than ever before. Forests were being cleared for unknown alien purposes. Worst of all were the human collaborators. Some helped the Vulgari out of fear, others for promises of power or survival. They pointed out hiding places, identified resistance members, and helped round up their fellow humans. Hayes called his top people together. Susan, Lisa, and others joined by secure video links from hidden locations around the world. We've been playing by rules that the Vulgari don't respect, Hayes said, his voice hard. It's time we showed them what humans are truly capable of when pushed too far. He pressed a button, and a file appeared on everyone's screen labeled Protocol Omega. This contains weapons and tactics that were deemed too extreme for any human conflict, Hayes explained. Things we created but swore never to use against each other. Now we use them on the Vulgari. Susan looked at the file, her eyes widening. John, some of these are horrifying. Hayes nodded. Yes, they are. That's the point. Today is the day humanity drops the act of being civilized. Protocol Omega changed everything. Within days, the nature of the war shifted dramatically. Susan worked day and night in her lab, her previous moral concerns set aside. She had created a biological agent that affected only Vulgari physiology. It attacked their oxygen-absorbing skin, making every breath painful and eventually fatal. Is it ready for deployment? Hayes asked during their daily briefing. Susan nodded, her face showing no emotion. Yes, I've loaded it into aerosol form. It will spread through their air filtration systems. Any chance of it affecting humans? None. I've tested it thoroughly. It only targets their unique biology. Hayes looked at the others in the room. Objections. No one spoke. 6 weeks of watching the Vulgari strip their planet and enslave their people had hardened even the most compassionate among them. Deploy it, Hayes ordered. Across the globe, resistance cells released Susan's agent into Vulgari bases, ships, and outposts. The aliens had never expected a biological attack. Their defenses were designed to stop bombs and bullets, not microscopic killers. Meanwhile, Lisa coordinated the most extensive intelligence operation in human history. Her network identified every human collaborator, from high-ranking officials to local informants. She compiled lists, tracked movements, and planned simultaneous strikes. "Are you sure about this?" Peter asked her one night, looking at the thousands of names marked for elimination. Lisa didn't look up from her screen. "They chose their side. We don't have the resources to take prisoners." The next day, resistance fighters across the world moved against the collaborators. It was swift and merciless. People who had helped the Volgari were given no chance to explain or surrender. Peter's contribution was equally devastating. Using data from the stolen ship, he and a team of engineers had created nanites, tiny machines that could eat through Volgari technology like acid through paper. They released them into Volgari communication systems, power plants, and weapons platforms. In just 1 week, humanity went from fighting a defensive war to launching coordinated attacks that left the aliens reeling. The Volgari had never faced such tactics before. Their previous conquests had surrendered quickly, negotiated reasonable terms, or fought conventional wars that the technologically superior Volgari easily won. Humans did none of these things. They used suicide attacks. They poisoned water sources their own people would need later. They destroyed valuable resources rather than let the Volgari have them. At a Volgari command post in what was once Berlin, High Speaker Zulthar watched reports of his forces suffering unprecedented losses. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his officers. "They were peaceful, cooperative. Their own history shows they treat conquered peoples with restraint." "They were hiding their true nature," one officer replied. "They have weapons they never revealed, tactics they reserved. They deceived us." Zulfar's skin turned a deep red, the Volgari color of fear. "Send a message to the homeworld. Request immediate reinforcements. Tell them," he paused, "tell them the humans are not what we thought. They appeared civilized, but it was a mask. These are deceptively savage creatures who hid their true nature." Back at the Rocky Mountain facility, Hayes watched a video feed showing the effects of Susan's biological weapon on a Volgari base. The aliens stumbled through their own ship, gasping, their skin turning gray as their ability to absorb oxygen failed. "It's working better than expected," Susan said, her voice flat. Hayes nodded. "The nanite attack is also succeeding. 6 of their orbital platforms have gone dark." Lisa entered the room with fresh intelligence. "Our teams in Asia have retaken 3 major cities. The Volgari are pulling back to defensive positions." "What about casualties?" Hayes asked. "Heavy on both sides," Lisa admitted. "But we're starting to win." Hayes turned to look at a map of Earth, now showing the first human victories as green lights against the red of Volgari occupation. "They thought we were soft," he said quietly. "They never understood what we've always known about ourselves. Beneath our civilization lies something they should have feared from the beginning." 3 months into the war, humanity had regained control of most major cities. The Volgari still held parts of each continent, but they were losing ground every day. Their remaining forces had gathered around their largest ships and outposts, creating defensive positions that were difficult to attack. In the Rocky Mountain facility, Hayes studied the latest intelligence reports. His face was thinner now, marked with new lines of worry. "They've called for reinforcements," he announced to the room. "Our deep space monitoring stations picked up transmissions. A second fleet is on its way." The news hit hard. Everyone knew what it meant. All their victories might soon mean nothing. "How many ships?" Peter asked. "At least 100. 5 times what they brought the first time." Susan stepped forward. "How long do we have?" 2 weeks. Maybe 3. The room fell silent. They had fought so hard, lost so many, only to face an even bigger threat. Hayes stood straight. "We need to send a message, not just to these Volgari, but to their entire empire. We need to make sure they never come back." "What kind of message?" Lisa asked. "The kind that travels through space and time. The kind that becomes a warning story they tell their children." Hayes turned to Susan. "Can you modify your biological agent?" Susan thought for a moment. "What do you want it to do?" "I want it to carry information. Images, recordings of what happened to the first Volgari, who underestimated us. I want it to spread through their species like a memory they can't forget." Susan's eyes widened. "You want to create a genetic beacon, something that will transmit the fate of these Volgari to their entire species." "Exactly. Can it be done?" Susan nodded slowly. "Yes. But I'll need access to their main communication array. It has to be broadcast from their own technology to reach their homeworld." Hayes turned to Peter. "That's where you come in. We need a team to infiltrate their command ship." Peter knew what that meant. The command ship was in orbit. Getting there would be hard enough. Getting out would be nearly impossible. "I'll need volunteers," he said simply. "You'll have them," Hayes promised. For the next 10 days, they prepared. Susan worked on her modified agent. Lissa gathered every piece of intelligence about the command ship. Peter trained with the small team of men and women who had volunteered for what they all knew was likely a suicide mission. On the 11th day, they made their move. Using the stolen scout ship, Peter and his team approached the massive Volgari command vessel orbiting Earth. They transmitted codes they had taken from captured Volgari officers, codes that should get them past the outer defenses. "They're letting us dock," whispered one of Peter's team members as the huge ship grew larger in their viewport. "Remember," Peter said to his team, "we only need to reach the central communication hub. Once we upload Lisa's iVirus and release Susan's agent, the mission is complete. Everything after that is a bonus." The scout ship docked with the command vessel. For a few tense moments, they waited to see if their disguise would hold. Then the airlock opened, and they moved into the Volgari ship. The fighting started almost immediately. Despite their precautions, the Volgari security systems detected them. Alarms blared as Peter and his team fought their way through the ship's corridors. One by one, Peter's team members fell, buying time with their lives. By the time he reached the communication hub, Peter was alone and bleeding from a wound in his side. The hub was enormous, a cathedral of alien technology. At its center stood what looked like a crystal tree, branches reaching to the ceiling. This was the heart of the Volgari communication system. Peter connected the device Susan had given him to the base of the crystal. The AI virus began uploading immediately, spreading through the Volgari systems. Next, he released the biological agent into the ship's air system. As he finished, 5 Volgari guards burst into the room. Peter turned, weapon raised, knowing he couldn't win but determined to give the virus time to complete its work. The first shot hit him in the chest. As he fell, Peter smiled. Above him, the crystal tree was beginning to glow with a new light. Humanity's message to the stars. 1 year after the war ended, Earth was a different place. Cities were being rebuilt, fields were being replanted, and in the sky, new defense platforms stood watch, built with technology taken from the defeated Volgari. Admiral Hayes stood at the window of the new Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva, watching ships take off and land. Some were human designs, others modified Volgari vessels. All served Earth now. Lisa entered the room, carrying a tablet. "The report you asked for, sir." Hayes took it and scanned the contents. The Chinese reverse-engineered their shield technology. "Yes, sir. And the Russians have adapted their faster-than-light drives to our larger ships. We'll have a proper space fleet within 5 years." Hayes nodded, satisfied. After Peter's mission to the command ship, everything had changed. The message, carried by Susan's biological agent and broadcast through the Volgari's own communication system, had spread throughout their empire. It showed what happened when the Volgari attacked Earth. It showed humans fighting back with unexpected savagery. It showed the defeat of what the Volgari had thought would be an easy conquest. The approaching reinforcement fleet had stopped dead in space. 3 days later, they had sent a single message: "We seek immediate peace." The terms had been simple. The Volgari would leave Earth immediately. They would pay reparations in the form of technology. They would never return. Earth had accepted, but with one addition: The Volgari would spread the message to all spacefaring races. Earth was not to be threatened. "Sir," Lisa said, interrupting his thoughts, "we've received a request for a meeting." From who? Not who. What? 3 new alien species have arrived in the outer solar system. They're requesting permission to send diplomatic representatives. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Are they armed? Heavily. But their weapons are powered down, and they're keeping their distance. They seem cautious. Hayes smiled slightly. Good. Set up the meeting for tomorrow. The next day, Hayes stood in the Grand Hall of the United Nations, building with Susan and Lisa beside him. The room had been rebuilt after the war, larger and more impressive than before. 3 alien delegations entered, each different from the others. One species looked like tall insects. Another resembled octopuses in special water-filled suits. The third was almost human-like, but with golden skin and 4 eyes. All of them moved carefully, respectfully. None came too close. The golden-skinned alien spoke first. "We bring greetings from the Galactic Coalition. We seek trade and peaceful relations with Earth." Hayes nodded. "Earth welcomes peaceful visitors." The insect-like alien stepped forward. "We have studied your recent conflict with the Volgari. We are impressed. The Volgari have conquered 17 worlds. None fought back as effectively as Earth. We learned quickly," Hayes said simply. The octopus alien made bubbling sounds that a translator converted to words. "We bring gifts to show our good intentions. Technology, knowledge, resources." Hayes noticed how the aliens watched him, waiting for his reaction. They were nervous, despite clearly having technology that could destroy Earth if they wished. "We appreciate your gifts and offer our own in return. Earth has much to share with peaceful partners." As the formal meeting continued, Hayes heard one of the golden aliens whisper to another in what they thought was a private frequency. Susan had designed his earpiece to pick it up. "Remember the protocol," the alien said. "Be polite, be respectful, and whatever you do, don't make them drop the act of being civilized." Hayes kept his face neutral, but inside he felt satisfaction. The message had spread even further than they had hoped. Earth would be safe now. Not because they were stronger than every species in the galaxy. They weren't. At least not yet. Earth would be safe because other species now understood what the Volgari had learned too late. Humans were masters of adaptation. They could be civilized trading partners or merciless enemies. The choice was up to those who came to Earth's doorstep.